Thank you for joining the Tulsa Christian Businessmen, presenting Jay Stevens. The Tulsa Christian Businessmen meet every second Thursday of the month from noon to 1 at the Wyndham Hotel on 41st near Garnett. This video was sponsored by Rick Thomas with Health Markets Insurance Agency and the Tulsa Regional Business Alliance. And now, Jay Stevens.
Right now I wanted to introduce our speaker. I heard him speak, and he spoke on a subject that was so important to me because culture is how I built my business. And the culture really started after I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. My whole thing changed on what I wanted to do and what I wanted my business to do and what I want my kids to do. He's going to talk about that today. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Our speaker this month is Jay Stevens. He's CEO of SCFM, Compression Systems Incorporated. He'll be sharing about his journey from grocery store manager to military officer to a CEO. Always having a natural inclination for leadership, Jay was the quarterback of his high school football team and the manager of a grocery store by the time he was 17 years old. I can relate to that. Jay is well versed in entrepreneurship, having started 3 businesses and planted 3 churches. He has a strong commitment to community and has led SCFM in many projects to strengthen Tulsa. I'm going to stop there. I had some more to read, but I'm going to let him tell his story. So would you give a real warm welcome to my friend Jay Stevens.
So I think we've really heard from the key speakers before I got up here. Amazing what's being done in the Tulsa area. Amazing what God's doing in the Tulsa area. So I've got a few words that I want to speak to you about culture. If I were to tell you my story from quarterback to CEO, we'd be here for 3 or 4 hours. But I can keep it down to 3,000 words if you'll just bear with me. I attended a great summer camp when I was in elementary school. And this summer camp created an environment for little kids to learn and grow and become more mature. And this summer camp did that with 3 little gestures or behaviors. The first thing I learned as an elementary school kid going to this summer camp, the first thing they taught us was make your bed every day. Make your bed. We even got graded on making our beds. Now, if you're 10, 11, or 12, Mom didn't always make us make our beds. So you get into that habit pretty quick. The second thing that they taught us was that they used a statement all the time, and it was, you don't have to, you get to. Now, think about that. You don't have to, you get to. If you're a shy kid, that kind of changes the whole tone of whatever activity you're going to do, like jump off a 40-foot platform into a freezing cold lake or climb up, a ladder that goes, as a kid, forever and ever. New things that you'd never thought to do. Just saying you don't have to, you get to, changes your perspective on that. And the third thing that they would say every day, the counselors would say it, we'd hear it in the mess hall, God first, the other guy second, and I'm third. So think about what that does to a little kid. First of all, you learn some discipline, make your bed every day. Secondly, you learn to overcome your shyness with a state of mind, a different state of mind. You don't have to, you get to. And then finally, God's first, the other guy's second, I'm third. That teaches you a little bit of humility and unselfishness. That environment that they were creating, let's just call that culture, because that's what it was. They were creating and maintaining a culture with 3 things. And for 3 weeks, Those things were reinforced, they were modeled by the staff, and encouraged and repeated over and over again. It was intentional, and it created a great culture. Now, my home had a great culture. I don't know about your home, but when I grew up, Mom and Dad had a couple of things that they taught us over and over again. I think you can relate to some of these. Eat all the food on your plate. Did you ever hear that? Okay. Why? Who can tell me? Starving kids in Africa. Right? Eat all your food. One thing that my dad reinforced, there were 3 boys and 2 girls in our family, and so when you're living and growing up with your brothers and sisters, you tend to get into fights. But Dad had a rule: never, ever hit a woman. Even if you're antagonized, never, ever do that. Another thing, say please and thank you. Another thing, use Mr. and Mrs. when talking to your elders. Another thing, get your studying done before you go out to play. Now, when you're a little kid, you want to go out and play basketball and play with the other kids, but you've got to get your studying done before you can do that. Now, here's what I hated. Every year, Mom would take me to school the first day and introduce herself to my teacher and introduce me to the teacher, and then here's what she would say, right in front of me. Mrs. So-and-so, you have our permission, you know where I'm going with this? To spank Jay anytime he misbehaves. And not only that, you know what's coming after that too, don't you? Not only that, make sure you call us, because when he gets home, he's going to get it again. Now that reinforces something, you know? And finally, Dad taught us something that was really important in that family culture. Finish what you start. Whatever you start. You can start anything, but you got to finish what you start. So I want to talk for a few minutes about culture, about how to get a culture started in your company and how to maintain that culture. The first thing I would say to you is you've got to be intentional about it. Every organization will have a culture. Every organization. It's either intentional or it's not intentional. It's either some influential person in the company guiding that culture, or it's you as the leader in your company or organization guiding that culture. So you've got to be intentional about it. When I got to SCFM in 2009, I spent the first month or 2 getting to know everybody that worked there. We're not a big company. We were 60 people at that time, but that's big enough that culture is going to be really important. So I spent the first month or 2 getting to know everybody. I interviewed all the managers. I did the kinds of things that most of us would think to do if you're coming into a new organization. I asked 3 questions. What's going well? What's not going so well? And what needs my immediate attention? So I had a chance to assess everything. And I bought into the company, so I was a 1/3 owner, and I sat down with my 2 partners and I said, hey guys, and by the way, we're as different as you can be. The 3 of us are as different from each other as you can possibly be. But we had one thing in common. We were all 3 believers. Amen. And so I said, guys, I would like for us to be a little more intentional about our culture. And I kind of laid out for them what I thought we could do. And they said, that sounds great, let's do it. And I said, okay, remember today that you said that, because let me tell you something. If we're going to have this kind of a culture, you better roll your sleeves up and get ready, because it's going to get dirty. And I'm talking about the kind of culture where you lay out the values and the behaviors that you expect from people. And you treat people like family. And you hold each other accountable, and that even means the CEO is accountable. And you build great products, and you help one another. And so they all agreed to that, and they were happy about it. And so our first thing we did was we sat down and we drafted a cultural document to describe what the culture was going to be. And then we got the leadership team together and said, guys, here's what we're going to do. This is not a huge change, but it's a change, and we want to be very intentional about it. We need to come up with a set of values or characteristics that everybody buys into and that we can hold each other accountable for. Here's what we came up with as a company, as a leadership team. Number one, God owns the business. That changes the whole perspective. Think about it. God owns the business, not us. I had nameplates made up for my two partners and me and every manager that has a nameplate on their desk. And it has their name facing outwards towards any visitors, and the part that they can see is God owns this business. So God owns the business. The second thing, character matters most. But that's kind of all-encompassing. Not being a character, there's a lot of characters, but character itself matters most. Thirdly, sometimes those doors are tough, you know. Thirdly, as a value that we're going to all share, meet our clients' needs. Next, our clients and our suppliers are partners in our success. And finally, everyone is a lifelong learner. Never quit growing. Keep learning, keep growing throughout this whole journey. Now, you know, I had a lot of trepidation getting this started. New to the company, new to Tulsa, and I just wasn't sure, how it was going to be received and how it was going to play out. But about a month or so into this, my partners called me in and we sat down, and one of my partners said, I'm starting to get this. Here's what I hear you saying. Let's hire the right people. I think about what he's trying to parrot back what he's been hearing from me for a couple of months. He said, we want to hire the right people. We want to treat them as family. We want to make great products and take care of our clients. We want to grow old together. And when we die, we want to go to heaven together. And I just said, that sums it up. That's it. That's what we want to do. So now it's time to implement. We took these 5 values that we agreed on, and we had nice posters, 36 by 24 posters, laminated and put on the walls throughout the buildings that we had. Our campus had 3 or 4 buildings on it. And so everywhere you turn, as you're walking through SCFM, you get to see something about our culture on the walls. We put it in the shop so everybody in the shop could see it. The second thing we did was we changed our... How many of you have staff meetings wherever you work? You got a weekly staff meeting or whatever? Nobody does? Okay. We had weekly staff meetings. We called them leadership team meetings. And our leadership team meetings are weekly, and we devote a section of that leadership team meeting to culture or leadership every meeting. And we rotate who's leading the meeting. The CEO doesn't lead all these meetings. I have 1 week a month where I lead, and the other weeks are rotated among everybody else. If you're a manager or a leader in our organization, you're going to lead one of the monthly staff meetings from time to time. And we're going to spend some time in that meeting on culture. We started reading books. We actually as a staff, we would read books together, and one of us would do a book report or a summary of the book, and we'd discuss it. Here's a book, if you want to be intentional about your culture, here's a book I would suggest to you. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Has anybody heard of that book? Okay. Clearly some of you guys need to start being readers. that was a bestseller. So, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. I guarantee you when you read it, you will see everybody on the staff in a different light. You'll identify with it. Another thing we did in terms of rolling this out My wife and I got together and we said, we want to get to know everybody in the company. We had 60 people or something like that. And I said to Karen, I'd like to have them all over for dinner at various times. And she said, I'm with you. So 2 Fridays a month, we had 4 different people from the company over for dinner. And you get to know a person a whole lot better when you get them comfortable, get them around a dinner table, and you just get to talk about things. So now it was time to model behavior, to set an example. And I picked out 3 people in our company that I wanted to just pour into, get to know. I told you I had interviewed all the leadership team members of the company when I first got there. And so I picked out 3 people. The first one that I picked out that I wanted to pour myself into was our HR manager. Shelley had been my first hire when I got to the company. I looked around, we had 60 people, but we didn't have an HR manager. I said, that's a really important function, not to have somebody doing that full time. So we brought Shelley in, and Shelley was, I would describe the basic personality of my company as rebellious introverts. Most of them are engineers or shop guys. We build gas compression systems, and so you're always going to be heavy in engineering and heavy in assembly in that kind of field. And so, if you know engineers, you know what I'm talking about. If you know guys who like to turn a wrench, you know what I talk about. You know what I'm talking about. These guys never met a person that they liked, and they never met a piece of machinery that they didn't like. And they would walk right by a living, breathing human being to go look at somebody's new car, or somebody's engine, or somebody's boat, or one of the compressors that we sold. So Shelley was different than that. She had what I call it. She was a child of the '60s. And so she was a misfit in our company, and so am I. But I decided she was going to be somebody that I poured into. She was also the first person after my partners and I agreed on the culture that we were going to have. She was also the first person I talked to, because Shelley was an atheist. So I went down the hall after my partners and I agreed, and I said, all right, let's roll up our sleeves because it's going to get dirty. I walked down the hall to my HR manager's office and I said, Shelley, we need to talk. So I shut the door and we sat down and we talked, and I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, listen, we love you. You're doing a great job. And we want you to stay. But here's what we're going to do with our culture. And I know that you don't believe quite the way that I do. But if you'd like to stay, I'd like for you to stay. But these are the values that we're going to have, and this is what the kinds of things, this is how we're going to behave in our company. And so I laid it all out to her. And at the end of that, she said, I don't understand the Jesus thing, but why wouldn't I want to work for a company that's going to treat me like a family member and care about me and be with me through thick and thin? I'm in. And I said, fantastic. And so I breathed a sigh of relief as I left her office. But she was the first one I had to sell on this. The second person that I decided to pour into was my parts and service manager. Randy's his first name. When I interviewed Randy, and as I watched Randy day by day, it became clear to me Randy was easily the most influential person in the company. He'd been in the industry for 35 years. He'd worked every job you could possibly work in gas compression, assembly and design, and all those kind of things. And he knew how to lead people, and everybody looked up to him. And I said, this is somebody that I want to pour into. Randy had a challenge. Randy's wife had MS. Do you know anybody that has MS? It's a very debilitating disease. I didn't know a thing about MS. I knew of MS. We did the MS walk every year because Randy's wife had MS. but I was pretty ignorant about what MS did and what it was. So we called in a nurse to come talk to myself and a couple of others on the leadership team. And I said, tell me about MS and tell me how can we help Randy, our coworker, whose wife has MS. And so she talked about the symptoms and what it does and how it affects people over time. And then she made this statement, which really raised the hair on the back of my neck. She said, it's very typical for us to lose the caretaker before we lose the patient. I said, what? And she said, oh yeah, the caretaker will basically work themselves to death trying to take care of the patient. Later on, when I talked to Randy, he said, Jay, you don't understand. I don't have a normal life. I work here all day and then I go home and I take care of my wife. That's what I do. And I thought in my head, I said, that's not right. We got to do something about that. So the first thing we did was we bought Randy a bed. We bought them a bed where she could raise her side and lower her side of the bed, one of those motorized beds, where she could do that. Pam had basically nothing worked except her right hand. That was the only thing that functioned. And she would have to wake Randy up 2 or 3 times a night just to turn her over and move her around so she could get comfortable. Well, if you get a good sleep interrupted 3 or 4 times a night, that's going to affect you. So she now had a means to, raise herself up and lower herself. And then we got a home health care person to come in on Saturdays and Sundays. So Randy could actually do the kinds of things on Saturday that most of us try to do, go out and have some fun. And on Sundays, so Randy could start going back to church. And so Karen and I, my wife and I decided, as a part of pouring in, it's not going to be easy for Randy to bring Pam to our house. But we can go to their house. So we would take food once a quarter. We'd take some food over there and sit down with them. And Pam would come out in her wheelchair and we played Name That Tune. We'd have dinner and then we'd play Name. She loved 80s songs and I was pretty good with 80s songs. And so she teased me by playing the first line of the song out of the 80s, and I had to try to guess the band that did it. And we'd go back and forth. It didn't matter who won. She was engaging and getting to have some fun, and she hadn't done that. Randy said, it's awkward. All of our old friends, they don't really know what to do with us. And so they don't come see us anymore. So we did that. And so we got to know Randy, and we helped Randy, and his life became a little bit more normal. And the third person that I decided I was going to pour into, I kind of did this on the fly. I hadn't anticipated this, but we brought in a temp. I'm going to call him James. And James was a hard worker. We brought him in to do a certain function for us, and he learned that function and did it well. But James was not the kind of guy that get his job done and then go outside and have a cigarette, or get his job done and go look for a place to hide. He would grab a broom and sweep up the shop floor, and he just kept himself busy. In other words, he took initiative. And so all the managers pretty soon started raving about James. And so we brought him on full time. And James turned out to be a fantastic worker. There was only one problem. Well, there were a couple of problems. I found out James didn't have a driver's license. So I went over to see a shop manager. We were walking around the shop, and I said, how's James getting to work? He said, drives his car. I said, are you aware he doesn't have a driver's license? He goes, no, I didn't know that. I said, well, he doesn't have a driver's license, so he's not going to be driving his car to and from work anymore. I said, we can't endorse that. I said, especially since we know it. I said, James is going to have to find a way to get to and from work. And if James can't do it, if you like James enough and you want to keep James here, you find a way for him to get back and forth to work. So James's wife began to bring him to and from work. And we found out that James had a number of unpaid traffic tickets from his wilder days. in Texas, and they had taken his license. And so until those tickets got paid, he wasn't going to get his license back. So I asked somebody in the admin team, I said, one of you guys go through James, go through the motor test, the written test for getting your driver's license, go through that so he knows it A to Z. And we paid off his unpaid tickets to try to get him back on the right path. The other problem that James had, the other challenge he had, is he was a drinker. And so he had a problem with drinking. And we knew we had to address that too. So far, so good. Culture's getting traction. People are starting to understand the values and the things that we believed in. What more could we ask for? Well, God showed us what more we could ask for. Because when things are really going good, it's easy to think that you've got the culture rolled out and everything's fine and the POs are coming in and everybody's busy and financially everybody's doing well. You think your culture is really good. But is it really good? Well, we found out. In 2013, maybe if you're in oil and gas, maybe you can remember, in 2013, the Saudis cranked up production, and the price of oil went from $100 a barrel down to $30 a barrel. I mean, the industry just took a nosedive. And people stopped producing, people stopped buying gas compression, and we were a company where normal revenues for a year are 25 million. In 2013, we did 5 million. In 2014, we did 2 million. And in 2015, we did 0. The big goose egg. Nada. We didn't make a penny. Our top salesperson during this time slipped in her garage, had a concussion. So serious that she was out of commission for 2 years. And she's never come back. She did make a recovery, thank God. Amen. But she's never able to come back to work. We had $28 million worth of deals we were ready to sign. And $28 million worth of projects dried up overnight. We had 2 Iraqi deals that we were ready to do. They canceled those deals because, if you'll remember back then, they had a civil war going on. Our best client halted production. That killed 2 deals. That was about $10 million worth of business. Another client closed down 2 plants in 2 states and canceled their deals with us. And so, you know where this is headed. We had to do a big layoff. And by 2014, we had gone from 60 employees down to 7. Down to 7. 4 employees and 3 owners. That's where we were. I don't know if you've ever had to lay people off, but it's not fun. And it's not easy. As a leadership team, we all got on the phone. Everybody that we laid off, we found a job. Every person. We began as a 7-person company to pray. 3 or 4 times a week we would get together in the lobby, circle up and hold hands. You know, guys holding hands. Guys who like machinery and not human beings holding hands and praying. As owners, my 2 partners and I, we started praying every day. We all had our own prayer life. I'm not saying that we didn't pray before that. I'm saying we cranked it up. And so we began praying every day as the owners. Now, as 2013 passed and 2014 came, and then 2015, I got to tell you, by 2015, it was pretty lonely in our administration building. 7 people, 18 offices. The shop was pitch black. I went out and started soliciting people to come in and lease office space from us and lease shop space from us as ways of generating some revenue. And so we did that. everybody wore a bunch of hats. I mean, obviously, 7 people trying to do the jobs of 60 people, we started wearing a lot of hats. And then maybe the funniest thing of all is I decided our website needed to be completely redesigned. And since we didn't have the money to do that, guess who redesigned the company website? I had never designed a website before in my life. But that's part of setting the example. That's part of doing what you got to do to keep moving forward. We kept in touch with our former employees, and they kept in touch with us. As we entered 2016, it really got tough. I didn't take a paycheck the last half of 2014. I didn't take a paycheck in 2014 or 2015 or the first 6 months of 2016. The 3 partners decided we weren't going to take paychecks. So 2.5 years, almost 3 years without a paycheck. You know it's bad when your corporate attorney and your tax guy both start strongly hinting that you might think about shutting the doors. That's what happened to us. We were even being told by our closest advisors it might be time to shut it down. I saw my 2 partners one morning talking in one of their offices, and I stopped and said, "Hey, it's a good time for prayer. The 3 of us are together. Shall we pray?" One of them looked at me and said, "I'm all prayed out. I got nothing left." And the other one said the same thing. And I walked back to my office lower than a snake's belly. I mean, that was rock bottom. That was rock bottom. Competitors were closing their doors, and that didn't even make us happy. But little did I know that God was working behind the scenes. This is the part you need to hear. A power plant on the East Coast was going to go through an expansion project, and we got a call from a guy who had worked with my 2 partners 30 years before and hadn't seen them since, and said, "These guys are going to need compression. They don't like their current compression people. You need to call them." So our sales guy called and had a good talk with this guy, and he said, the plant manager said, "Hey, I'd like to come see your facility." Our salesperson thought really quickly and said, that'd be fine, but why don't we go see the manufacturer who's going to build these compressors and tour his facility? That would really give you a better picture of what you're going to get. Okay, that sounds great. So we worked a deal. We worked through February and March, and we finally signed a deal, $10 million deal, to build gas compression for a power plant expansion. It gets better, by the way. Bear with me. Bear with me, Ted. We no sooner completed that deal, negotiating and signing that $10 million deal, then this plant manager talks to his counterpart in South America. And the counterpart in South America says, "Hey, I'm going to need compression because I'm doing a power plant expansion down here in Argentina. Who are you going to use for compression?" And the guy we just signed a contract with said, "I'm going to use SCFM. You need to talk to him." This guy called us, South American plant manager calls, has a talk with us, and says, "Well, I'd like to go ahead and sign up for some compression." We said, "Great, send us a PO, and we're ready to start going." He says, "I don't have time for that. It'll take 3 weeks for my people to crank out a purchase order. What's your bank account information? I will wire you the money right now." More than happy to give that to you. $3 million in 2 hours. $3 million in 2 hours. He'd never met us, hadn't seen our offices, talked to us once on the phone. This is what happens when God is working behind the scenes. This is what happens when you hit rock bottom and you think God has forgotten about you. This is what can happen even when your closest advisors are telling you it's probably time to shut the doors. Don't give up. Now, at any point in time, over that 3 years, you realize we could have imploded. It's real easy to start playing the game of pointing fingers, and it's your fault, and if you hadn't have done this, we wouldn't be in this position, and if you hadn't have done this, or if you'd done more of that. Really easy to play the blame game. We didn't do it. Because we had a culture that would sustain us, even in tough times. Now I'm going to wrap this up. Let me tell you about the rewards of having a great culture. It's more than just financial. We went from 0 to 60 miles an hour in a matter of days. And it was fantastic to see. Let me tell you something that's even more fantastic. You remember that HR manager I was telling you about who was an atheist? Who I had to convince that we were going to do this new culture? And she said, I'm in. You remember that guy James in the shop that had the drinking and alcohol problem? And had to go to alcohol...
Anonymous?
Yeah, had to get some training on that. Do you know who paid for him to go to drug and alcohol training? My atheist HR manager. Out of pocket, she paid $850 for him to go to training. Now, is that buying into a culture or not? Do you remember my parts and service manager, Randy, whose wife had MS? He calls me one Saturday and says, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, going to church like normal. He goes, would you go to church with me? I said, sure, what's up? And he goes, well, I've decided to give my life to Christ and I'm going to be baptized and I want you to be there. His wife passed away a couple of years later and he came to me and said, would you do her funeral? Because she felt like you were the pastor she never had when she was an invalid in this wheelchair. And I said, I'd be happy to do that. The final thing was, remember James was the guy that we brought from temporary and made him an employee, and he was a great worker. It's hard to top when James knocks on your door and says, can I come in? I said, sure, come on in. He comes in, pulls his driver's license out of his pocket, and says, I'm driving now. And I wanted you to know about that. You can build a culture that can survive anything. Remember, there is no testimony without a test. We've been through the test. And I'm sure there's going to be more that we'll go through. You can build that kind of a culture if you will be intentional about it, get agreement on the values and behaviors that you're going to have in your organization, hold people accountable, love them like family, and as my partner said, grow old together and go to heaven together. Can there be anything better than that? Thank you.